would be more effective than others in assessing at a particular cognitive level, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's begin to make sense. I'm going to ask that you look under your chair. If you have an envelope, please take it out. Not everyone will have one. But if you do, please take it out. All right. So let's have a little fun talking about assessment. I want to add another thought too. You know, there's diversity in learning, right? Maybe I should start like this. We have favorite assessments for different reasons. It doesn't matter the reason, but there are some assessments that we just feel more comfortable. Some of you would much more prefer open response or a short answer than a multiple choice. And for some of you, it would be the other way around. So there's diversity in what we appreciate. I want to talk about how you can use each of these. And you guys have a whole handout on this. But I want to focus on a few. So who wants to hear more about one of them? You can pick the one you want to hear more about.
Simulation.
Bio.
Problem-based learning.
Problem-based and simulation. Who has the comment on problem-based? The person with the envelope. Who has problem-based? Okay. Would you tell us your name and please read the statement?
Hi, I'm Scott. So the tips for problem-based learning: students learn about the topic through real-world situations and problems. Helps students develop flexible knowledge, develops application skills.
There we go.
And students may work in groups or individually.
Mm-hmm. So we're really wanting students to be able to apply, maybe even at the level of create, analyze. Problem-based scenarios may be the best. And you think about problem-based scenarios, I love this. You know why? Because when you're in a problem-based scenario, let's say it's, I'm just using if you had it written here. And you have a problem here. There are so many variables that are in that problem. But the challenge for your student is picking out the variables that matter. They're having to analyze, right? Because some of this stuff may be just frivolous information. So you're assessing their ability to analyze there. Okay? Let's do simulations. Who has simulation? All right, please tell us your name.
Hello everyone, my name is Beth. So simulations is asking students to demonstrate proficiency in reacting to simulated situations and problems.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be administered individually or in groups.
Yeah.
But it can be difficult to set up, hard to score, and hard to assessing higher order thinking skills.
The top of the pyramid.
Yeah. And I don't know what it means, but it can include self-assessment.
Can include self-assessment as well. Okay, good. So let's think about this, simulation. I want to paint a picture because we see this every year. If you've been here at A&M in the community longer than a year, you know when you see all these fire departments come to town? And you know we have that fire school out there, the West Campus area by the airport. Fascinating space. Sometimes if you're looking towards the west in the evening, you see these tufts of smoke coming up. That's the fire school. So we have first responders coming from Texas, some even further than our state, to train at the fire school there. Now they have more than just the fire school there. It's a whole training facility for first responders. How many of you guys have been out there and you've seen the collapsed building? What things do they have out there? Who wants to tell us?
They have a railway car that's on its side and a helicopter that's crashed.
A building that has collapsed as well. It's a simulation school. And you think about the problem scenarios that they can set up there. You know, how do you deal with a burning building? How do you deal with evacuating a rail car that's on its side? Or how do you navigate as a first responder? You think about what happened in Haiti through a building that's collapsed. Those first responders, they don't learn on the job the first time a building collapses and you go over and you solve it. No, there's training that goes on related to that. You think about the way that pilots are training now and the simulations that they do. simulating solving, flying in certain weather conditions here, anything like that. Simulations are incredible. You can do them real world, such as what we have at our fire school area, and then also you can do it on computers. But you're always pushing towards the level of create, analyze, apply, those high order thinking skills, okay? And also the situations are pretty real world. It's a great way. Let's do one more. Who wants to hear about another one? Portfolio? Yeah, who has portfolio? Certainly. Thank you. And please tell us your name.
Alicia,
Alicia.
portfolio is a selection of coursework that a student assembles in order to illustrate growth and accomplishment over the term. Might include one or more papers, drafts, revisions, journal entries, essay exams. Electronic portfolios are becoming more common.
And I'm listening to portfolios. Would you guys agree that that form of assessment may be more relevant in some disciplines than others? Right? Where would we see portfolios commonly?
Humanities.
Okay, in the humanities? Okay.
In the
Architecture.
arts. Yeah, my sister was an art major and she had to put one before she could graduate.
Absolutely, and they assess that. You know, oftentimes when you're assessing with a portfolio, as Alicia mentioned, it's a collection of students' assignment. So their performance, you'll see things they did at the beginning of the course, middle of the course, end of the course. And as an instructor, sometimes the way you assess that is student progress. If there's a particular skill that you are looking at, I'm being generic with art. Say it's the creative use of parallel lines. How they did it here, how they're doing it there, you know? So it's interesting. So what I challenge you guys to do is to look back at your learning outcome. Is there a format that you think fits your outcome, the cognitive level that you're planning at, that you're planning for? Would it be most appropriate to assess in the form of a true or false question, multiple choice, simulation? How would you assess your outcome? And you all should have a handout that lists all of these. It's called Tips for Assessment. You should have that. So if you want to look at that to have your background on those. And Alicia, we will have to put them online. I know some of you in here don't have a handout. I'll send the handouts to AFF and we'll post them in eCampus. Okay. May I have someone volunteer to share their outcome with the assessment? Was that a raised hand there? Or just a move of the note card, okay? Like no. Yes. And please tell us your name.
Okay,
I remember faces, but I forgot.
my name is Amir,
Amir.
and I think I can choose 3 of them.
Okay,
One is short answer, one is true, false, and one is multiple choice.
wonderful. And what's your outcome, if you wouldn't mind reading it?
It was, comparing, testing, hypothesizing for evaluation level,
Mm-hmm.
and then computing, charts, solving, examining for apply, and inference or interpretation for analyze. So I had 3 different levels
Mm-hmm.
and multiple verbs for each level. And I think those 3 categories that I chose for short answer, multiple choice, and true false can do the job for assessment.
Okay, all right. And so I've got to ask, those multiple areas, are you taking your students through a progression of interacting with that topic? So you're starting them at a lower level and you're pushing them, or How is it
Actually,
that?
honestly, I had no idea about these charts or these levels, so I probably redesigned the course now knowing these things. And I think that sometimes when you don't have no idea or when you have no idea what different levels are, you just design random questions in different categories and different levels, you mix them up, and that's why they're confused sometimes. So I think now, I never did that. I never looked at if I'm doing like first starting from this level and then progress to a different level. I just put everything there.
Mhm.
So now I think I'm gonna do that if I want to teach again.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, glad. I'll say this to you all. You know, often in a class, say you have a single topic area. In the class, you may have this little piece where they need to remember it, of course. But then you're going to the level of understanding. Write your learning outcomes at the highest level that you expect them to perform at, knowing that they have to go through some of the other steps or be refreshed at the level of remembering or whatever precedes that. But on your syllabus, or when you list them in your lecture, write at the highest level, okay? Because that's the level you're going to assess them at, okay? All right, here's the fun part. Oh, well, not quite. So here's an example here. Students will be able to explain interpersonal communication skills, short answers, oral presentations will fit the bill. That lake effect snow event, I love this. Maybe even a simulation where you give students the weather conditions, you could tell them the pressure, you could tell them about the temperature of the water, the temperature of the air in a simulation, and they have to predict whether we would see this event occur or not, that dumping of snow right off the lake, okay? And then for architects, someone said this already, yeah, definitely, portfolios are effective, okay? So, this is important. Learning through diversity. Faculty and students bring an array of experiences, background, skills, and teaching and learning process to the teaching and learning process. Effective teaching capitalizes on these rich resources to the benefit of all, which we call learning through diversity. So this kind of goes into the teaching strategies area. That's going to be our next phase. I always say that as an instructor, for a single topic, you always want to have multiple approaches to facilitate it. So that's what I want to talk about. This is where teaching gets fun, in my opinion. All the creative things you can do in the classroom to bring forth student development at those levels. Let's look at a few. Here we go. 66 teaching strategies. Loosely, you can group them into 5 families of activities. The first one is a family called direct instruction. That's traditional lecture, 60 minutes, and I'm speaking to you, right? I'm expounding on the information. It's also the idea of drill and practice. When we give students problem sets and say they have 10 questions, and while the questions are different, they're reinforcing the same skill, that's direct instruction. Indirect instruction has to do with like problem solving, inquiry. You guys have a handout with this as well, so you can follow along. The 5 families handout. I love this one. Experiential learning. I think about a botany class that I took and an ecology class when we went down to the Brazos River. Field trips. Real world as you can get, just about. Hands-on. Experiential learning. And then also simulations are located there. Yeah, we knew that was coming. That's right under experiential. Independent learning activities. Research projects. What do we call them? The 691s or is it 681s, 691s? Independent learning. That's a type of strategy as well. What cognitive levels would independent learning force you to operate at? Some of the highest ones. And then interactive instruction. This is the idea of debate. We've had a lot of interactive discussion, instruction here today in the discussions that we've had. I want to read something to you. And as you listen to me talk about these 5 please try and identify your preference. Although we know as an instructor you would use all of them at some point. But identify your preference. So this is what we mean by direct instruction. It's teacher-centered. It explicitly conveys information, you guys can follow along, and develops skills in students involving sequential steps. So if you have something that you really need to take them through steps, direct instruction works. Is that your preferred style? Indirect instruction, it's learner-centered. It considers the learner's interest and their curiosity about the topic. Students are highly involved in, here's your cognitive verbs here, observation, investigation, inference, and hypothesis forming. If we look at experiential learning, uses real-world and hands-on experiences. Students are encouraged to personally reflect on the experience, analyze the most important aspects of the experience, and generalize key principles. I've got to tell you about this. A lot of instructors choose not to use field trips because they think it's a waste of time to students. They say they goof off, they don't get anything out of it. If you're using field trips, the way that it's written as an instructional activity, here's your field trip. There should be a pre-activity and a post-activity. In the pre-activity, you're priming your students for what they will experience. You can have activities, you can have written assignments, all before they actually get to the event, which forces them in the event to know what they're to pay attention for. And if they know that they're having a post-activity, they're not going to goof off. I'm speaking towards your undergraduate students. So if you're using field trips and you want to make it worth the time, use the strategy in its completeness. It's not just happily go and learn what you do. No.
From a practical standpoint, how do you fit field trips into a curriculum when you register for a course that's 10 to 11 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
How do you do that? I'll say this. Have the favor of your department head and strong learning outcomes, because if you can defend what they're going to learn, especially if you've already planned the post activities, you can get the funding and the time. I'll tell you how I've seen it used in a botany class. We always took field trips in that class. I remember one was to an organic farm there, but it tied in with the learning outcomes. The university, they put it into our fees. There was a little extra for the vans, and I guess it went towards gas and things we would use like that. But if you have a strong defense and a tight curriculum around that activity, I don't see why they wouldn't. It's a real world thing. Okay? Anyone else want to share how you see it? Yes.
I also had a botany class that for the lab section, every single lab was a field trip. It was to the woods or to a prairie or to a swamp. Every single lab was essentially a field trip, and because it was a lab, there was a grade associated. We had things to do as homework for our lab afterwards, so it was one of my favorite courses.
Yeah, we love that. So again, it just depends, I think, on the favor that you have and the justification. If it's not already written into the curriculum that you're inheriting, your justification for wanting to go for that trip. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. All right. So we're still listening here. Who feels that they are a fan of independent learning? Ooh, bio, this might fit you. This is a great way to assess and to facilitate students' personal attitudes and values towards a curriculum. Okay? And some of the attitudes and value that this teaching strategy will facilitate is initiative, self-reliance, desire for self-improvement. Most people, unless they want those things, they wouldn't even sign up for it. And then also, it can be group-based or individual. Last one here, interactive instruction, debates. It utilizes observation, listening, interpersonal, and intervention skills. Definitely. Listening skills, interpersonal skills. You need that. How to disagree properly. So you're not only teaching the content, but you're teaching a little bit of social skills. So this is what I want you guys to do now. If you have a cell phone, I'm going to ask that you pull it out. We're going to take a vote. I want to see who favors what. I'm going to ask, please, that using your cell phone, the text message feature, I'm using polleverywhere.com. This is free for up to 40 students. I want you, this is the text arena, 37607, and you're going to text Rashida, RASHEEDAHRIC 391. So in the text field, you're writing this information, Rashida, Rick 391, and you're texting this information to 37607. This is to join the poll. You'll receive a text reply, and then you can start your voting A, B, C, or D. Let's see if I can get. Did I hit it? Okay, I see one person who's made it through. 2 people. So we have indirect. Well, actually, it's more than that now. Okay. Yeah, who do we have in the room here? So Louise, you have most people favoring independent. Interactive, making advances. Oh, indirect. Who are we as a group? Okay. About 30% independent. Still off to the races. All right, so about what and what? Most of us are favoring direct instruction at this time. Has that changed? Okay. So you guys are getting the idea. I want to say this. Teach according to your preference, definitely. But remember, as much diversity as we see in this poll here is the diversity that you're going to have amongst your students. So why not use multiple strategies? Okay? Okay, I'm going to stop this part, and I want to show you how to use a multiple strategy, a strategy if you like lecture. So say you want to change up your lecture to grab some engagement. Here's how you do it. Here's our poll. Active learning. Active learning fits exceptionally well in the lecture classroom. And I'll show you how, right after I tell you what active learning is. So most people, when we think of active learning, we think of it being hands-on. Maybe something that you would do in a lab. But when you look at the research, it's not just hands-on. It doesn't have to be hands-on. That's part of it, depending on the context. It's more this idea of minds-on. That means you're asking students, and here we go. You're asking students to engage in reading, writing, discussion, problem solving that promotes these cognitive activities. So it's not just hands-on, evaluation, analysis, and synthesis. And here's what it can look like in a classroom. I'm going to skip ahead here. So pretend you're lecturing for 60 minutes. And you know if you go forward for 60 minutes, your students are going to be nodding off, right? Energy shifts lecture. It's the idea that you and your students share time in classroom. You have your 60-minute lecture that you've prepared. Chunk it. Lecture 15 minutes. Give them 5, 10, 15 minutes of time, and then go back with the second half of your lecture. Now, when you're giving students their time, what are some things that you can do with them? Here we go. Show a video that relates to the topic. You're speaking to them in another way here. They're seeing visual images. They're getting auditory. You could distribute a problem that brings out that topic. You can give them a great problem scenario, a real world scenario to let them grapple with that. You can assign a brief class writing assignment. Even if you stop the class after 15 minutes and ask them to write about a point that they don't understand from the first 15 minutes, that's active learning. And it's also information for you, right? If you collect that information, okay? You can set up a debate or role play. You can ask students to generate a test question. Depending on how long you've been teaching, you may appreciate that more than other people, okay? Ask them to generate a test question. You can set up a brief grade to assess students' knowledge of the topic area. And again, it's this idea, 15 minutes of you and lecture, 15 minutes with the student, 15 minutes of you again on the second half of the lecture, and 15 minutes again for them to close down and reflect. If you favor direct instruction, here's a way you can blend. Okay? The last thing that I want to look at, and we're wrapping up, I'm going to flip back. Here are some other strategies. Remember we talked about our outcomes and how they're each at different cognitive levels. Someone's taken the time to map teaching strategies, and I'm so grateful, to each cognitive level. So I want you to take a look at your learning outcome. You know the cognitive level. You have the assessment format. Let's try and put a strategy for teaching that topic, okay? You have this on a handout. So if you were at the level of remembering, here's some strategies that you can use. If you were at the level of evaluating, maybe debates, a case study, Socratic questioning, compare and contrast chart with a debrief, that's an instructional strategy. Okay? So let's close by mapping the final part. Is there someone that would be willing to talk about their outcome and then share their teaching method? All right.
So I teach general chemistry students. So it's very basic. Pretty much the main thing we want them to do is to learn safety and teaching practices. So I have that the student will demonstrate proper safety practices while in lab. And I think a simulation would be really good for that.
Love it, love it. So you're actually observing them maybe during the sterile pipetting technique or whatever it is. Love it, love it. Someone else, that's very good. or you're having them practice that as a teaching assistant? Yes, ma'am. And
Okay,
please tell us your name.
Oh, I'm Leah. I'm
Leah.
from English, so I'm thinking about like a general rhetoric and composition class. My learning outcome was students will produce persuasive writing
Mhm.
using 3 modes of persuasion. So obviously, first I would teach them 3 modes of persuasion.
Mhm. The
and
remembering
probably-
level,
yeah,
the lower level.
use a remembering level strategy to make sure that they understand the modes of persuasion. And then I would have them move up to creating, because they would have to create an essay or a portfolio of essays.
Love it, love it. So I hear your assessment and your strategy in there would be them actually designing some time, maybe homework assignments where they practice the design in one of those 3 modes. Yeah, yeah. All right, lovely, y'all. So just to tie up the last end, you guys have gone through a lot tonight. If anyone ever asks you to propose a format, you got it. We're designing a lesson, you're in that interview, and they want to hear about your beliefs about course design. Think back to this model. Not only can you tell them learning outcomes assessment and teaching strategies, this idea of reflecting and documenting and revising, these are the easier parts here, we're not going to cover those. But you can tell them the actual way you write a learning outcome, or how you connect a learning outcome to an assessment to a teaching strategy. You've gone through the process here, okay? So I just want to go back to our goals for tonight. We just had 4. Describe the characteristics of an effective learning outcome. What are they? What are some of the characteristics of a well-written learning outcome? Student-centered, student will, what else? Measurable. What other things?
Concise.
Concise, having those verbs, right? You choose the cognitive level. Discuss diverse techniques for assessment. We did that. And we learned when an assessment may be most appropriate for a cognitive level. Choose instructional strategies. What have you guys learned about that tonight? Something new that maybe you didn't know before. About yourself, about teaching strategies.
Well, for me, I think I could explore more.
Yeah,
You know,
like
'cause I
try
was
new
very,
things.
streamlined, like traditional. Yeah, so that's something on Friday I try to, introduce to my section and see how it works.
Yeah.
I hope it goes
I
well.
see some headlines. And see how it goes, that's
Yeah.
right. I always say this in your class, if you have the liberty and freedom to do different things, try it. If it doesn't work, don't do it again. You gotta take risks.
Right.
Have a little fun, you never know. Keeps it engaging for you and for your students. Okay, and then the last, anyone else want to share under teaching strategy? Yes.
It's just an idea that goes with the last bullet too, but if you like, because a lot of times we teach the way that we like to learn, but if you create like a tic-tac-toe board, and then put the different possible things students could do, and then they could choose as long as it lines up, and it gives them a choice, and it gets us out of doing things the way we're most comfortable, because not everybody likes to learn in that way, so it's just another way to get us out of our comfort zone, but give them choices too.
I love it, I love it. That goes with that diversity in the learning environment, right? Diversity in our teaching strategies, diversity in the, I don't know if you mean it in terms of homework, maybe where they get to choose same topic, same outcome, but the way that they're moving towards that outcome, let them have some freedom with it perhaps. Okay, all right, I saw another hand.
Oh, I was just gonna say that my name is Diana.
Hi,
That,
Diana.
She just said that we like to teach the way we learn, but for me, what I learned in that is that the way I like to learn, the way I like to teach are completely opposite ends. So I prefer to learn in a lecture setting. I prefer to teach at the interactive.
Interesting, lovely, okay.
Wow.
And I'll say sometimes too, our situational context, if you are a TA and you have a supervisor, you could want to do a lot of things. But you have a supervisor.
Yeah.
So that's understandable as well. But when you're on your own, right? If your department head allows you, go for it, okay? And then again, sometimes the way we absorb information is different from the way that we like to teach. That can happen too. our learning preferences versus our teaching style. Okay, and the last thing was apply the course development cycle. What you just did on your index card, you applied it. Okay, any questions? You guys are so terrific. All right, thank you.
Thank you.